Okay, we might as well get started then. I guess we might get some people drifting in. So this is a session about group sites and microsites and a bit of local gov Drupal. So I'll do introductions. I'm Eeks. I'm Eeks on all the platforms that I'm active on and some platforms I'm not active on. But you can find me on drupal.org as Eeks and on the Mastodon Drupal community. So if you want to ask questions or anything via those channels are probably the safest. I'm a freelance developer, which I describe as a freelance developer for projects for a better world. And one of the things that I have been doing quite a lot of recently has been working with local gov Drupal. How many people here have you heard me outline what local gov Drupal is before? A bit. Okay, most people not. So I'm going to give a quick introduction. It's quite a lot to get in, and I do still want to do some demo stuff at the end, so I'll try and go through it quite quickly. It gives you an idea of what the project is, which is why we then built microsites the way we built them, and give you an idea of what the needs were and all the rest of it, and then how we built it, and then how you can use the stuff that we used to build your own set of microsites, which is a fair challenge to get through, but let's go for it. So the background for local gov Drupal. So it's in the UK. I should also say English is my native language if I speak too fast, particularly because I know there's a lot of stuff to get through. Just kind of go like that. So all the local authorities, so that might be up to like a whole city-state like Berlin, but also down to small village councils and all the rest of it, have very similar websites. And they've been either, redeveloping the same tools over and over again, they've been locked into one agency, or they're paying annual license fees for proprietary software. And so there was the idea to start building a communal thing. It got lots of funding from the UK government to get started, which did actually help, and yeah, it's now growing. So, wrong one, down. So back in 2020, there was a person, sometimes it takes one person to kickstart these things. There's a person called Will Callahan who was working at Brighton and Hove Council, and he moved to Croydon Council, and he realised he was rebuilding the same thing. And so they just took the code base from Brighton and brought it to Croydon, and then decided to generalise this. So this was all kind of specific code, so we spent quite a lot of time generalising it, and then the next year we had like 6 councils, then 16, then 51. It's more than that by now already, and these are actually all councils that actually have joined the collective. So they not only use the website, which is open source code, so anyone can roll it out, but they've actually joined the collective to keep the momentum and keep it sustainable. And so they've set up a co-op, and all the councils, that's just some of them, join this co-op. And all the suppliers, and there's more suppliers than that now, also join this co-op. So they pay some money in to keep the project going, and also join the community. The biggest part of that actually is just a Slack channel. And that Slack channel's got everyone. It's not just developers, it's also got the content creators in it. So you've got people from the local authorities talking to each other about content strategy and planning what things they need to change and stuff like that. There's also, the code's all up on GitHub. It will be moving to Drupal.org once the issue queues have gone all GitLab like. One of the motivations for that, though, is that lots of the suppliers want the Drupal.org credits for all the contribution that they're making into all these things. and the and by being a member of the co-op, so not just taking the code and rolling it out, which people do, so there's more councils, you actually get onto the steering group, the product group, so you decide what new things get developed and how things work. Local Gov itself is just a simple distribution. It's kind of, that is the profile, but we don't really use the profile. It's actually just a whole set of modules. It's well documented. And yeah, like I say, it's a lot of individual modules, so it makes it easier for us to put things together. And it put us in a good place for building the microsites, because we were able to take out lots of these modules and just put them into a separate thing. And to give you an idea of how it works, stuff like the publications came from Chicken, which is a small agency who are working with Hammersmith and Fulham, I think. And they just did it because they wanted it, and then they've contributed it and other people are using it. The alert banner, which is really generalized and will probably be useful for all your websites. You know, you can basically have alert banners that people click away and they don't reappear. You can say what pages they're on with context and stuff like that. Came out of Brighton Council themselves developing it. So yeah, it's very similar to the slots thing, but very specifically only for showing alert banners, remembering if you've seen them, clicking them away. But yeah, it completely uses a block that's always there, and then uses context to say whether they appear or not. And they're their own entity type. Anyway, so yeah, lots of stuff gets contributed in like that. But so that's what we'd built over several years. And then in those meetings that I was talking about, so like in that product group and all the rest of it, the question was, what's the next biggest killer thing that you really, really need? And the answer was microsites. Because councils tend to have loads of small websites. Like, some of them have like more than 100 tiny little websites all over the place. One department will spin one up on Wix or WordPress or whatever, and they'll, you know, maintain it for a while, and then people move on and it's forgotten. It quite often doesn't meet all the requirements that local authorities have to meet for accessibility and so forth. So this was the motivation for building the next platform. But before we started, and another useful thing that you can pinch for your projects, somebody from Agile Collective, which is one of the suppliers, worked out a system for getting people not to build microsites. It's a set of questions. There's a web page for it that you can look up. It's a set of questions that you can go through to decide, should I have a microsite? Should I have content on a sort of sub-site of the main website? Should it be in the same design as the main website? And things like that. So it's a way of trying to discourage people from firing up yet another website. So if you have that kind of requirements, go take the knowledge and just reuse it. So the use cases. So the actual use cases where you should make a microsite for these local councils. It's quite often promotional sites, campaigning sites. If I show you the local gov distribution, the UK government has spent loads of money on user research, and they have like patterns, like these huge select boxes, and everything's very white and black, which is very good, very user accessible. Again, that's stuff you can just go and use. They've put it up online. There's government design system. Link at the end. But sometimes you actually want things with much more pictures, and you know, it being more friendly, particularly like for the fostering services, you don't want this kind of stark exterior. Also, another one is like the directory services. That's complete jargon. Local offer and send. So that's the sort of like family services who then collate all the services in their region that you can go to find help and so forth. But quite often they want other people to maintain that information. They want other people to log in. They don't want to give a login to their main council website. So the same thing for shared services across authorities. They want to fire up a new site with different users, with different people who can maintain it. They're the use cases. So that's what we were building for. Okay, so the user needs. So the department or whoever is getting the microsite want complete control over the microsite. They quite often want to put a lot of images in. They want much more control over the layout than they would do on a standard site. And they want to control their own content. The other user is the local authority itself. And they want accessibility on all the content so that they don't get fined because it's the law that all of their stuff has to meet all the accessibility requirements. Sadly, they want Google Analytics on everything and want to roll it out standard. If anyone wants to go into the business of having a decent non-Google Analytics that we could just offer as a module, but with the cookie consent and the GDPR and consistent branding where it's needed. So that's the background. That's why we built kind of what we built. And what we did build, well, what they built looks a lot like all these. You can see it's much more the picture friendly things and all the rest of it. So boom. But what we built behind it, and this is the structure of the microsite setup. So we're now getting into the detail. We built a control site. So the primary domain is the control site. So the user of this one is the local authority. So you saw that user case who wants to control what's going on. And we tried to make it as simple as possible. So there's, it's not, I'd like it to be bigger, but it's not for whatever reason. We've got a really pared down version of a Drupal site with very little that you can do except manage the users and manage the microsites and put users onto the microsites. So this is the list of members that you can add into the microsite. You'll start to recognize this. This is group module, basically. So you have a control site and then the microsites that are maintained underneath it. So there's actually some videos of this, but I'm going to skip over them because hopefully I'm going to get through this fast enough and I'll do a live demo and fail in live demos. But we'll give it a go. So that's the use case for, that's us fixing the use case for the local authorities themselves. For the end user, or the people who are building the microsites, appearance was one of the most important ones. So they want to be able to fix and change the colors and the body fonts and all the rest of it, and the line spacing. It is possible for them to put a whole new theme onto the site, so they can have a separate theme for every single microsite. But to fit with we want more control over what people are doing. We built one base theme with a lot of variables in it, and then one config page with the ability to change everything. Again, I've got a video for that one, but I will show you how you can make a complete mess of a website, hopefully, by changing all the colors in a moment. And then the other one was that they want to be able to control the content and edit it themselves and not see anything else. So we've built around those groups, we've built custom admin interfaces that only show the content and access the content. And so people are kind of locked into just seeing what they need, and it's nice and simple. That's the default content we send them, and it's the standard edit form. We're using layout paragraphs. So that was the bit about being able to control the layout and all the rest of it. We did also look at layout builder, or whatever it's called. People preferred the layout paragraphs. That's where we are. Maybe when the experience builder comes along, we'll do something different. So that's kind of how it looks like, and that's the logic of the user stories we were fixing and so forth. But how does it work? And this is the microsites bit of it. This bit, or this breakdown, I've stolen from Christian, the group module maintainer. You've basically got the problem of detecting what microsite you're on. You then want to assign content to it. You want to be able to manage the content into it, and you want to then manage the access of that content for that microsite. And so domain module is perfect for detecting what domain you're on. Domain module does have lots of other submodules that do stuff with content, but it's very node-based. It doesn't quite go there. Whereas group module, excellent for, assigning different users to groups, giving different access control for what they can do within those groups, for all that management. So at the start of this project, I was sort of like, it's obvious, we're just going to get domain module, we're going to get group module, we'll put some glue to connect them together, and then we've got it, no problem. And there was already a module out there called domain group, which did just that, but it was group 1, so again, it was just nodes. There will be code on these slides. You do not need to know exactly what it says. I'll explain. It's more the narrative. So I had to change it from node access to entity access so that it could work with, because group 2 and 3 won't just say this node is in the group or this user's in the group. It says any content you want to make a group relationship for, it will sort out the access control. So the taxonomy terms are only in that group if you want. The media is only in that group if you want. You can also say, actually, this media can be shared across all the groups. So you've got complete control over where all different entity types go. But to do that, I had to add in entity access. But that's not just it. You also have views. So you have to alter the query of the view. And so I did some stuff, and I ended up adding an extra inner join for the technical people on top of all the other queries that group's already doing to lock it into the one group. It works. It was surprisingly efficient. It was good. We were still in alpha, I think. We might have gone to beta. There were plenty of people who were already using this in production because they really wanted it. They had hundreds of microsites, they wanted to go out there. And then Christian, working for Factorial, had a client who we do not know who it is, but is apparently a large client with lots of microsites, had the same or similar use case. And he came along with a module called Group Sites, which is what I will now focus on for the rest of the time and explain also how you can use it. And what Group Sites does is much more clever than my entity query alter, so we could get rid of that. But it did mean we then had to make an upgrade path for people who'd already put this stuff out in production, but we were either going to do it then or never. Anyway, so Group Sites, what does it do? Well, it takes over the detection bit. It does actually use domain module for deciding what domain, and it then sets it as context that's available, like as in context API context. It's always available on the site, and then it uses group and the access API and the calculated permissions, which I'll briefly show, to decide to do the access control on the content. So there is one more module involved in addition to group sites, which is group context domain. And this allows you to connect domain module into putting it in context. Theoretically, you could write a similar module for the path. So you could say each microsite is on a particular path, or anything else you can imagine. They're just context plugins So I mentioned this permissions calculator. I'm going to just briefly roll over the underlying technology of this before I then show you how you can do it as a site builder in the UI. So it implements an access policy. These have gone into core now. And the reason it's even better than what I was doing is it's altering the permissions, and group has this concept of insider, who's a member, and they have their particular roles, an outsider with their particular roles who's not a member, and an individual member. And Christian was able to then use this access policy to allow you to alter the permissions. And his queries basically actually get rid of a whole load of the stuff because it's only the one domain, the one group, so the query actually becomes simpler than it would be on a normal group site. So you can have a single site access policy. As I say, he only looks at the individual ID and removes all the others and adds his thing in. By doing that and making it pluggable, I didn't mention, but right at the back at the beginning, we had this control site, but people still had the permission to create content on it. So they would create content on the control site, but like they'd make a media entity, but it wouldn't actually go into any of the microsites. We want them to log into the microsite to create it so it knows which site the content is getting made in. But because Drupal has these global permissions that say you can create media, we still had people, particularly who'd given themselves lots of permissions. So I've implemented a control site access policy which replaces the single site, the no site access policy, and it literally just alters the permissions and only keeps the ones I want, and nobody can do anything else with the site. So you can do this in Drupal core now. You can do all sorts of scary things with permissions. You can take permissions away. You can just alter them all. If you want to know more about that access policy API, which went in, there's a DrupalCon session by Christian at Barcelona that's on video on YouTube. You can look at it there. So I'll just skip over that because that's quite enough. So group sites makes this easy for you though. All you have is this group sites configuration page. You won't be able to read that, but it has a context provider, which is the one that I mentioned. You choose it. If you had more context providers like Path, you could choose it. You have an access policy to do what happens when there is no group available, and you can just deny access, and you say what happens. That's it. That's all you have to do. Install the module, install the other module, and then you make a group. You make a domain. You make a group, and then once you've done that, on the domain page, there's a drop down to select which group is associated with which domain, and that's it, basically. But we found that too complicated because people have got to go here and then there and then back and all the rest of it. So we tried to simplify it and break it down. And that's where I'm going to go to what we built, and see if I can do a live demo. You never know, we might work. 2. Escape. Yeah, I am there. F11, Control E. There we go. And then I'm going to move myself around because the screens aren't mirrored. And if anyone's got any questions, now is equally a good time. So I don't need to log out. So this is the, I keep on forgetting the fact that there is now this log out confirmation step. It broke lots of tests. Anyway, so this is the control site. I'm guessing I'm going to have to zoom in on this, aren't I? Control, Shift, there. Oh, crap. And this is me with a new keyboard that I'm having to get used to. There, that would be easy, wouldn't it? So, where am I? Okay, so this is what I meant. I've completely paired. So the don't edit content is still there from when they were able to edit content in here. If you've just installed group sites, up there instead is a switcher, and you can if you're on any of the microsites, you press the button and it switches the microsites. If you've got the permission, it switches the microsites control off, and all of a sudden you have access to everything. So it's as if you weren't locked into a domain or something like that. But yeah, we've changed it. So group sites, standard concept, you have all the microsites and you can just log into any of them and you can switch it into admin mode and it takes off all the access control and you have the full site of all the things. Our concept is you have a control site which is locked down and there is no microsite site. And so, yeah, let's open it in a new tab, okay. So we've got the microsites. There is only one microsite, which is this one, which has already got its content in it, that's the rolled out default content. Again, trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone. And this one, you won't be able to read the domain at the top of it, but is my local gov microsite 2. There is no site on it, so it's just heading to the control site again. And you just see a login. So to make it nice and simple, I will add a microsite and hopefully it will work. So the domain I want is this one. With the local authorities, one of the big problems is domains, because they're .gov.uk domains are really hard to get, so people come and get all sorts of domains. But it does mean that people put microsites onto subdomains, but quite often they're just all sorts of random domains they're picking. Anyway, so you give it a name. You put the host name in. So what you're basically getting here, for anyone that wants to know what's underneath, it's a multi-step form, but it's basically just creating a domain entity and a group entity and doing that bit of the group the domain configuration that adds the group. Yeah?
So the domain entity is a config entity, right? So you use config ignore?
It's up to the. I've written a thing that by default it is, but people can choose whether they. There's a bit of config that says, please export it or please do not export it, and it's up to how people are managing their stuff, whether they want it that way or not, is the answer. But yeah, there's a nice event that you can hook into when there's imports and exports, and you can just say, do not export this piece of content. So you don't need to use config split even or anything. It kind of packages with it. And then there's a setting. Do export it, don't export it. Do I risk it testing the? And it wants That's it. I'm just going to tell it not to test the server response. So it tries to check the domain that I'm testing, but I've just copied and pasted that, so I'm going to believe it's working. It will be the internet connection, whatever. So it should have created it. And now, let's hope, live demo. Live demo with domains not working. Yay! There's content. And then I can add in, so this is, this is pared down groups basically. I will now edit the Berlin test microsite because it's already set up. But you can see the members there. So I'm logged in as controller, and I've added a site admin to it already, but you can just add members, invite members. All of that came free from groups. And that's particularly useful depending on what permissions they're giving. It means that people are managing their own microsite can actually invite people to become other managers of the microsite without having to go through someone creating a user and someone attaching it. Different use cases, different sets of permissions. Some people want to lock it down and only have certain users added, but so I will now log into this one with that site admin user that I created, and we can look at the content. And I think I made this site admin with the classic password of site admin. And so this is the locked in. Let's zoom in a bit. This is the lockdown content administration bit of it. So if I also open the home page, so that's the test content in it. And you can see there's all the different paragraph types and all the rest of it. And so they have a nice dashboard that just has the users, the content, and then at the top, I will not go into the details about directory facets and so forth, but one of the things that we did for local Gov Drupal was made content facets. So same problem, is it config? No, we want them to administer it all on the site. So we have another sort of facet, which is another entity type, that auto-wires all the facets on the side, so they don't have to place a block when they create a new facet type. They can create new directory types and say which facet types are available to that directory. It's all content, so they can all manage it on the site and create things. And that was the convenient thing of having built that in modules. We could then just say that module also goes into microsites. And we created a page where they can turn on and off those different content types. So we put blogs, directories, events, web forms. Web forms is a bit of a pain. Also config. Also, and you can put config entities into groups as well now. So it's not only content entities, you can put config entities into groups and you can lock down the access control on them there. But of course, web forms then have submissions as well. So you need to make sure that the submission also gets the same access control on it. It's fun. But it's perfect. You just add another group relationship to say that it's in the group, and you know which group it's being created in because you're in the domain and the domain context is available. Group sites. And so the other thing I promised I would show was this site design. And so I'm going to do something horrific, I think. You saw how it looked when it looked good. But I'm just now going to pick. Do I have to save that? Okay. Select. It's kind of a bit difficult doing from here, I have to say. There. Shall I text? What else shall I change? Font size, 18. Base font size has just gone up. Line height. We generally recommend 1.5. Do not use units. 1.3. Okay. Bold. There's a selection of fonts, and there is a viewer for it. Text color, I don't know. And then there's also, you can put stuff into the header, You can change the header width, you can change the colour, you can also change what content is in them, as I recall. And also, yeah, if I save it, we'll get some idea because it'll probably look ugly. So if I refresh this, yeah, it's all gone green. You've got that unreadable thing. There is a module installed, which I've clearly not switched on, which is a JavaScript accessibility checker, and it highlights all the issues with your color contrast. It also has a plugin actually for reading content, and will give an idea of the reading age of the content as well. So, yep, that was kind of what we did. If I go back to the microsite administration, yeah, that was ugly. They have the access to add and invite the members and so forth. So that was it. Are there any questions? Yes. So the question for the recording, which I've now remembered, was if you are now using domain, is there a way of moving over to using domain and group sites and generating, yeah, it would be generating all the groups that are required and then configuring them for the domain. I don't know of one yet, is the answer. But I guess it wouldn't be so difficult to write. Because you've got basically domain nodes which are assigned to the domain, so you just have to automatically create a group for all of them and then create a group relationship. So the way that group works is you have your piece of content, you have your group, and then it has a new entity called a group relationship entity. Which was the thing that changed its name, which was why you had group 2 and group 3 parallel to each other for a while, because upgrade paths for changing entity names is difficult. But yeah, so when you would have to create a group relationship entity for all the content that presently has, I don't know what domain does to say which pieces of content are in which domain, but I assume there's a database table somewhere or an entity somewhere you can query. It's stored on the entity. Yeah, so you would have to write an upgrade script that loads them all and then saves a group relationship entity. No, because all these people were starting out afresh. The big upgrade pain for us was moving from my domain group implementation to getting everyone to do group sites, which was largely just a case of making sure certain modules were installed beforehand, like the variation cache, which is how the access rules are remembered. It works like the render cache. It's gone into core, and you have cache tags on anything. In this case, the permissions that have been calculated. Anything else? No? Cool. Okay, that's 40 minutes. I did rush through some of that rather too fast, but that's good. I'll just put the last slide up, which has some things. I'm afraid I did not. Getting the nice, there's no sponsor slide, because getting the nice things out of a Google slide onto this one. Export anything from Google Slides, nightmare. So, but there's the links for the group sites, The design system, which I mentioned, which is that really clean, researched government layout, and our project itself. Okay, thank you very much. Oh.
Is there a possibility of having a different theme layer for different groups? I mean,
Yes, yeah. So actually what we use is another domain module we do use is you can have domain config. Domain config basically lets you arbitrarily make configuration for any site and override the standard configuration. So we've made it so you can select a different theme and it will just use domain config to say, actually load this piece of config, so it loads this theme instead. Yeah.
Actually, I think that's quite confusing because if you combine like with the domain module with the groups module, then you always have like two dimensions of how you're gonna implement it. Either you use the domain override system and you use like modules from the domain ecosystem. But also I guess there is module in the groups ecosystem that you switch the site, the theme of a site based on the group. At least I thought so.
Yeah.
And then you could like pick module from this ecosystem.
Yeah, we've tried to pick, well, out of domain, we only use domain config and domain itself for choosing the domain, and don't use anything else from the domain system. Domain config just came in useful so often for things that, yeah, have not been implemented in group. And we know that it's always going to be on a domain for our system, but if you did a system that was based on path, then you would, you know, a microsite per path, then you would have to implement it using only group and switching in that way. Okay, then we're definitely finished. Thank you very much.